Welcome to the Operatory podcast, the podcast about burying the dinosaurs in dentistry, moving past outdated technology and procedures to find a better way. With me, as always, is the man, the myth, the man.
The man, the myth, the man.
Yes.
Okay. I always thought it was the man, the myth, the legend, but whatever. It is early.
You haven't quite become legendary this morning, my man. Sorry. David Pryor, providing the patient perspective. As always, the outside perspective from the industry, so important, as always, as the cliche says, now more than ever.
Clearly.
However, my man, you gave me a patient perspective that I've heard my entire life. Not even, this is pre-dental school, pre-high school. You looked at my notes for the podcast and said,
how can you read that?
How can you read that? You must be a doctor. Yes. Yep. I remember my only C I got in like middle school was in penmanship, and I had to sit there with my mom, who does calligraphy, and did not help at all. Sorry, Mom.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure she's listening to this podcast.
Anywho, yeah. Part two. You brought up such a great point, Dave, on the last podcast about choosing your struggle, like what choosing your pains. If you haven't listened to that podcast, I would recommend it. It's about what to do, how to increase your practice in a post COVID-19 world,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And at the end of it, you brought up a point saying, the people listen to this podcast, they're the type of people that are going to
They're going to seek, they're the people that are going to seek knowledge and become, they don't sit there, bury their head in the sand and go, oh, well, it's a post-COVID world, I guess I don't know what to do. I'll just continue doing things the same old way. And my suggestion is that our audience is not that particular type of person. And you had made a really good point that knowledge isn't action. And so we wanted to dig deeper into that particular issue. So fire away. Tell me what your thoughts are, particularly with dentistry.
Okay. Well, now, I would argue that dentists are human beings like everybody else, right? And hygienists, except for, there are some specific dynamics in that most dental practices are sort of a small group of people, right?
Yep.
And in a lot of times, it's like a group decisions, not a single decision, right? Yep. So there's barriers there that there might not be in other businesses. Let me put it that way, right? So let's back up a step and say, if knowledge were the answer, everybody would be thin and successful because there's no lack of knowledge. I mean, there's this thing called Google that you can. I mean, if I don't. This weekend, I was at my son's baseball game, and there's this like weird like pop-up, like one of those shelters for to keep kids away from the sun, and the woman couldn't figure out how to collapse it, and so of course I'd go to the Google machine, there's a 30-second video on how to do it, right? Because there's like instead of pulling up on something, she had to push down on something, whatever, and the thing's fixed. If we can't Google it and like figure out what to do in like 30 seconds, I don't know about you, but I get mad. I'm like angry that like, why isn't there a 15-second YouTube video showing me how to change out the carburetor on my car? I mean, it's like anything you want to do, you can learn. Like, look, Google. I mean, there's probably people listening to this that have done YouTube videos about how to extract a tooth, right? I mean, so the knowledge isn't the answer. It's the actual application of the knowledge. And when it comes to a practice, this is a sort of a complex thing going on. It's not like even as simple as losing weight, where just don't eat as much and you'll lose weight, right? I mean, it's a pretty simple formula, yet we all struggle with it, right?
Right.
So listening to a podcast, getting the answer isn't the answer. I believe the average practice has the one thing that everybody, not outside of dentistry, I think would help is focus. Like, what truly are you going to work on? Like at our company, Dave, we have 3 goals, and that's it. Everything else is the devil's vortex, right? So you only have 3 goals. We're focused on 3 primary initiatives. Sometimes you have to work on stuff that isn't there, but at least you are conscious on what are the 3 goals we're working on.
Now, before you move on, explain to the audience what Devil's Vortex is, because it took me about 6 months to figure it out when I started working here.
Oh, okay. Well, in my words, it's anything that doesn't directly improve the 3 goals we're working on. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Okay.
Okay. So, I mean, and it doesn't matter if you have Warren Buffett has 1 goal.
Yeah.
The 1, right?
But it's every day.
Right. But, and I have 3 goals every day. So at the end of the day, I go and I put them in order, and I go work on 1 till it's done, 2 till it's done, 3. The key is focus, prioritization, and then really focusing on applying knowledge, not gathering more knowledge. Mm-hmm. Right? There's a lot of people that, like myself included, go in the devil's vortex of like getting a whole bunch of knowledge about stuff that doesn't directly apply to my goals. Right? Mm-hmm. I just ordered a political book. Right? Does nothing for me. But at least I know if I'm reading this book, it's not like nothing in my life is this book going to improve. If I have my personal goals, or learning more about politics is not at all a goal of mine. That doesn't directly help me at all. But
it works against me, I'll tell you that, because all it's going to do is make you angry.
Oh, it is going to make me angry. You're right. So it's like now I probably should just return the book. but that's the point, right? That it is a lack of focus, and so we all need to be not focused 100% on what we're doing, but really working to apply knowledge, a small bit of knowledge with lots of application is going to 100% beat a lot of knowledge with very little application.
Yeah, that's
right?
a really good point. And I can see, and I can particularly see in dentistry, because one of the things that I notice about doctors in dentistry is that you guys love to grab knowledge. I really
right.
think that dentists, if you weren't dentists, you'd be scientists.
Feels good. Little dopamine hit. Ooh, yeah. Brain got bigger. Yeah, you're right.
And so I think that is a dangerous addiction you guys have, is collecting a lot of knowledge. But if what you're saying is that they don't apply the knowledge, I think that is super dangerous.
I think it's dangerous to say that knowledge is dangerous, right? Because it's good, right? Yeah. But here's where I agree with you though. 100%. It's just that it's, that's the dentist in me. That's the dentist in me. I'm like, yes. I want to argue with you, right?
No, that's the Bryan in you.
Oh yeah,
that's the Bryan and Dave dynamic in you.
Well, and the dentist in me wants to stay focused on knowledge. But for example, look, adhesive dentistry hasn't changed in 50 years, yet we all want to go to the next bonding lecture. Look. There's scientists at 3M and Ivoclar and Dentsply Sirona and fantastic companies that test this stuff for us every single day. Are you going to be in that 1 hour bonding class, by the way, put on by a dentist, right? Are you going to learn the knowledge that scientist in 3M's lab has, that devoted his or her entire life to bonding? No. Just read the instructions to your bonding agent and go to a lecture to learn a new procedure. Like, don't try to validate your own thinking when you're going. Like, if you're going to gain knowledge, gain new knowledge, or go to a course that learns how to apply things in a new way, right? So I agree with you completely. And also dentists by nature, not myself. This is not me as a dentist.
Okay, here we go.
Dentists by nature are non-confrontational.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
So what that means is they probably have somebody in their practice that does not have a problem being confrontational, and frankly also doesn't like applying knowledge like pretty much every human on planet Earth. So when you do bring in that new initiative, I would guess the average dentist is met with massive amounts of resistance. And being non-confrontational, they'll just back off, right? So if you have a dentist or you have a dental team member that actually wants to apply knowledge, that means making a change, right? And as we talked about on the last podcast, people don't like to make changes. So you don't just have to apply knowledge for you. you have to figure out a way to motivate an entire team of people to do it that probably are the people that you really want to piss off the least because they're seeing your patients and you want them to be in a happy, good mood when they're seeing patients. So you have to get buy-in from your team, which is challenging because nobody wants to make a change. And then you don't actually want to make the change. So applying a change to a dental practice is very difficult, which is pretty much why we have this podcast about burying the dinosaurs in dentistry, because it's really hard in a dental practice to apply change. And so even something as simple as taking a paper form that's on a clipboard and making it better in every way by being paperless so you can text and email to patients. I mean, that it feels like a massive internal change to practices when we're doing that every day for tons and tons of offices. And once they do it, it's better in every way. But making that step, if a front desk person is like, oh my gosh, I spend 3 hours of my day processing crap paperwork that I don't need to. Why don't we get paperless forms? Well, the dentist is going to be like, oh, then I have to figure out something new. No. Or the hygienist is going to say, what, change? Oh my gosh, we had a change 3 months ago when you change the prophy paste changed. Oh my gosh, I can't handle another change. So there's a lot of these variables that I think, unless it's the office culture to improve every day, to look for improvements, it's hard to implement that change.
That's a really good point. Is I would think that it would be beneficial for really any practice to have a way to implement change on a regular basis and make improvements. And is there a way? Is there something that you do in your practice that encourages people to come up with ideas for change? Because ultimately you want a culture where you're trying to improve efficiencies within the practice, trying to make the practice more profitable, trying to make it a better place to work, whatever the case may be, whatever your initiative is, and maybe assigning things out to different people to say, you're the ambassador of practice improvement. You're the ambassador of morale improvement. You're the ambassador of technology improvement. Is there something like that that you do, or what is the path that you take in order to promote change within your own practice?
Well, so great. 2 points. One is that process is what we sort of detail at Upgrade Dental. So Upgrade Dental, which is an educational arm that we have, upgradedental.com, we have implementation guidelines and checklists for any initiative. So we have I think it's a 9-part series to how to implement any change, including, like you say, we call it a champion. Have one person and one person only who's responsible for this initiative to be successful. We have a way that you define what success looks like on the front end, how you're going to sell your team. There's a whole checklist that we have in Upgrade Dental, which you can try it out for free, so you can log in and see at upgradedental.com and try it out. So I would encourage anybody who's looking to actually make ongoing implementing changes. It's a great checklist. I've never seen anything like it that we created to help implement change it's really in anything in your life, but it's focused on dentistry, obviously.
Sure.
And then we talk about specific pieces of technology within Upgrade Dental and how to apply that to implement them successfully. So that's really the answer, is just go to Upgrade Dental and download the checklists and the spreadsheets, right? The second piece that you said was really what was about culture, right?
Yep.
How do you create a culture of change? And there's one answer to that. It's the people that are in your practice, right?
Yep.
Culture is really about the people that are around you. So if you have somebody that's constantly complaining about changing, I think you have to sit them down and say, look, I understand your perspective and change it, but, do you want to improve every day? Do you want to grow? And if the answer is no, so that's great. We haven't had this discussion before. I understand you want to grow, but we are going to grow our practice. We want to get better every day here. So you have two options. You can either decide that that's what you want to do, or you're liberated to go suck somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
It's really what it comes down to, or go find a practice that doesn't really that is less progressive than ours, right? And then look for the people that actually do want to improve.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting dilemma that I run into when I'm talking to doctors and different practices. Is that when I talk to a practice, I find that there's a lot of decisions by committee, and certainly from my perspective, I do run into doctors that are willing to confront a particular issue or be resistant to change. Like I just had a doctor yesterday where the practice manager is looking to get Opera VR for their practice because they're looking to move away from nitrous in post-COVID world. And so the office manager is like, this is going to be a great solution for dealing with patients. But the doctor is resistant because he doesn't want to work around the device. He thinks it's going to be an impediment. I'm like,
without even trying.
Right. You haven't even tried this thing, and you're already putting out this resistance to change. And I'm like, maybe, this isn't for you because you're not a person that's adaptable to change. And I'm like, this product, I've never in my life had anybody say, oh, Opera VR, well, that's not going to improve the patient experience. I can't see that improving. Everybody recognizes right away that, yes, it will do that. Now, what are the other impediments? And the impediment is always the same thing. It's the staff. The staff is like, I don't like change. I'm like, okay. Well, when it comes from a doctor, I always find that to be the most interesting dilemma when the doctor is resistant to change.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's why if you look at the world outside of healthcare, we have change every day.
Yeah.
Your phone has a new update. It's a totally different experience than it was a month ago. Cars are changing. Everything's changing, and you look within healthcare, and really the only thing that like if it's unless it directionally affects, there's really not that much change in healthcare, and I think that really what happened with COVID, like with the massive influx that we've had with paperless forms and teledentistry, and even VR's taken off like crazy in a post-COVID world. It's because we're forced to change. So people are like, okay, now I've got to change because I can't. I know it's like it's so hard to take your head out of the sand and start walking, but when you're sitting at home watching Netflix instead of being in your practice, you figure it's time to do it. And so that's, I mean, maybe a little skeptical view of why people are making the change now.
Yep.
But I think that's really, it just speaks to the whole point of this particular podcast, that really focus on implementing as much, or I would argue probably a lot more than gaining knowledge, because that's where the separation is. Yeah. Anybody, whatever you want to learn about, you can go to online and probably learn within a day how to do it, but actually being able to apply that knowledge that's where the real magic happens.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Thank you, Dave. As always, it's fantastic having you on the podcast. Appreciate it, my man.
Thank you, Brian.